Okay, so Sarah, who's one of my favorite VEDAs, did a thing the other day where she drank some flaming butterbeers and read Harry Potter fanfic. And it reminded me of my Twilight parody, which, as I've mentioned in past vlogs, is one of my favorite things I've ever done. And I decided I wanted to read it for VEDA, at least the first chapter. Except that I don't drink, so I'm gonna be totally sober for this process. It's really long, so I don't know if I'm going to include the whole first chapter in this video. We'll see. Okay, so my book is called The Most Popular Book in the Whole World. Chapter 1, I moved to a new town. So I guess you could say that it all started the day I moved from the town I used to live in and into a new town that I lived in that was new. I moved in with a hobo I'd met on the street when I got off the plane that day. His name was Lou, and he was really hospitable. He crafted a gorgeous, elaborate castle out of cardboard boxes, and he certainly didn't seem like a serial murderer, so that was good. Maybe you're wondering why I decided to move from the town I lived in before, which was on one side of the country, and into this hobo castle with Lou on the other side. Well, I'd tell you, but it's none of your business anyway, and it's really complicated. It's okay though, and you shouldn't worry about me because really, I'm okay. I'm strong and I'm tough. People back home used to call me Tuffy McStrongpants as a nickname, instead of my real name. My real name is friggin' Gorgeous, but Lou took to calling me Frig for short. One day Lou said, "Frig, this place is a pretty big place and you don't have any form of transportation. So I decided, since it's your birthday and all, my birthday is next month, that I would give you this." He knocked over one of the cardboard walls to reveal a wagon attached to some plywood. It was covered in stickers in the shapes of fairies. "What is it?" I asked inquisitively. "It's a car," he replied answeringly. "No, it isn't." "Alas, actually, but it is, lass." Sometimes Lou pretended he was from other countries. "It's for when you start your new school." There was no sense in arguing with Lou, mostly because he wasn't entirely sane, and half the time I couldn't tell if he was talking to me or the wall. So I hugged him and said it was a wonderful car and I would happily drive it to school. The town I had moved to was called Spatulus. Spatulus was great and everything, but the thing of it is, well, it had all this weather. Sometimes the weather was hot, and sometimes the weather was cold, and sometimes the weather was quite pleasant. I hated weather more than anything else in the world. So anyway, the day I woke up for my first day of school, the weather was happening, and that put me in a horrible mood. Lou was already gone, collecting bottle caps to trade in for quarters probably, so I hopped into my wagon and proceeded to scoot the 3 blocks to the local school. The school was called Learning Land, and I parked my wagon safely under a tree in the shade with pretty butterflies, and also there was glistening rain, and where did that come from? Wasn't it just sunny? Damn this weather! I walked slowly and with trepidation to the registration desk. The lady behind the desk was sitting and looked at me warily. "Name?" she pondered. "Frig," I uttered. "Oh," she melodified, handing me a stack of paper. "Write on these." I filled them out with beautiful aplomb and turned them back in to the lady behind the desk that was in the room that we were both in. She handed me a piece of paper with words written on it, and I read the words, and so determined that my first class was math. Boo on math, I say. I hate it and it's boring. But that's only because I know all about it. I'm amazingly smart. Did I tell you that before? Kids sometimes are jealous of how smart I am, but they don't tell me that because that would make them look bad. Mostly they just throw things at me and call me a freak. And look, there was a boy running up to me now. Perhaps he wanted to call me a freak, but actually that's not what happened at all. "Hi," he said. "My name is Steve." He extended his hand for me to shake, and I shook it and we shook hands. "I am Frig," I told him tellingly. "I think you're attractive," Steve said to me. "Would you like to go on a date?" "No," I said, "but would you mind telling me how to get to my first class, which is math?" "I could do that, because as a matter of fact, that is also my first class." "Hooray!" I yelled, and we high-fived each other. When we got to the classroom, there were already other kids sitting in it. I noticed they all had hair. Some of them even had hats. I thought they would instantly shun a new person like me, but miraculously another boy came up to me. "Hi," he said sayingly, "my name is Hector." "Hi, Hector," I replied in reply. "I find you very stunning," Hector said, "and I would like to take you out for coffee someday." I giggled and exhaled a little bit of CO2 at the same time. "Oh, thanks and all, but I don't consume liquids." "Well, can I walk you to your next class, which I happen to know through telekinesis that I have with you?" he asked. "Sure," I muttered. Hector and Steve silently glared at each other. It was funny. The class was boring because I already knew everything. Once the teacher asked me if I could add 3 plus 5. When I told him the answer was 8, he said, "Frig, have you already learned this?" "Yes," I said. "Well, we don't allow snarky know-it-alls in class, so why don't you go sit in the hall until you dumb up a bit?" So I went out into the hall and I sat on my butt for a while until class let out and Hector said, "Okay, follow me." I followed Hector to another class where I learned more things that I already knew, and finally Finally, it was lunchtime. I found a table full of vapid-looking girls. One of them was probably named Jessica because everyone is named Jessica. One of them was probably named Tabitha because I know a few Tabithas. One of them was probably named Lexington because I don't know anyone named Lexington, but I bet it would be an awesome name for a girl. And I bet one of them was named Joe. I was right on all counts, except the girl who wasn't named Joe but was actually named Christopher. They all lacked any distinguishing personalities, so I handed them some construction paper and asked if they could craft some stylish name tags for them to wear at all times. They said sure, and tittered or something. And that's when I saw him. I recognized him immediately. He was easily recognizable because his skin was bright green and he had antenna. I jabbed Jessica in the ribs. She said, "Oof, who is that green antenna guy?" I asked her. "Oh, him? That's Slorp. He's a space alien." "Really?" I shouted ponderingly. "Yes," Jessica said passionately. "Oh," I said with words. Lunch ended abruptly and we were all sort of going, "WTF lunch, where did you go?" I grumbled a little bit for no reason, then I went over to the window and looked out of it and grumbled at the outside for still having weather. And when I turned around, Steve was there to take me to my next class, which was Advanced Egyptian. I wondered if sometimes the kids at this school ever went skiing. I bet these kids wouldn't know a ski if it hit them in the head. I decided I hated all of them arbitrarily, except for that space alien. I just couldn't get him out of my brain. I kept thinking of his name. Slorp. It sounded so exotic, so alien. I wondered if he liked me. When we got to the Advanced Egyptian class, my heart skipped a beat, because there he was! Slorp! He was sitting right there in the class I was in! I couldn't believe it. The teacher told me to sit next to him because there were no other empty seats, and Steve grumbled a mighty grumble as he sat himself down at an empty table. Slorp didn't look up at me as I sat there next to him, but I couldn't help noticing his webbed hand sitting stiffly on the table. I imagined it, all weird and wiggly, caressing my face as he moved in to kiss me. But these thoughts were silly. I'd only just met Slorp. Well, not actually met him, as I hadn't really said a word to him yet. Maybe I should do that. "Hi," I said, holding out my hand in what I hoped was a really alluring way. "My name is Frigg." Slorp turned to look at me and his eyes bugged out of his head. Literally. Not in that figurative way most people talked about, but I mean his eyes really extended from his face and sort of goggled around in my general direction. I guess that was probably part of being a space alien. It confused me. It sort of made me want him more. But after the eye bugging, he turned right back to face the front and didn't reply at all. He didn't even tell me that his name was Slorp. I wouldn't have known that at all if it weren't for Jessica. Class bored the snot out of me because I already know everything there is to know about Advanced Egyptian. This dude was droning on about hieroglyphics and I was just all whatever. I couldn't take my focus off of Slorp and his alienness. Slorp kept making weird noises and gestures and I noticed he looked really tense. I wondered if it had anything to do with me. The thought made me nervous because I love him. He is my life, my heart, my one true reason for living, and it would suck if he didn't feel the same. I mean, look at me. How could anyone not fall madly in love with me upon immediate viewing? Anyway, somewhere during class I fell asleep because I was so bored, and there's only so long a space alien I was madly in love with could hold my interest. I awoke to Steve tapping me gingerly on the shoulder and saying, "Frigg, it's time to go home for the day." "Aren't we supposed to have more classes?" I asked with curiosity. "Yes, but not today. There's been too much exposition already," he replied smartly. As I walked to my plywood ferry wagon, I noticed Slorp rushing away from me in a fast way. "Hey Slorp," I called after him, making another effort to extend the hand of friendship and potential marriage, but Slorp merely turned around, eyes bugging, and ran on. Shoot! He must loathe me entirely. I felt bitter weeps of sadness lodged in my throat, and it was all I could do to scoot home safely in my wagon car. Lou greeted me at the door, dressed in a tiara and a tutu. "Arr, lassie, how be your first day?" "Horrible!" I screamed in a loud voice. "You wouldn't understand!" I shoved him out of the way and ran for my box, and heard him say something about minding the tea cakes. It's obvious he doesn't care about my pain anyway. Yeah, so that's chapter 1. If you want to read the rest, there's a link to the whole thing in the description. And I'm also trying to see if I can get other people to read other chapters on their vlogs over the course of April, sort of like a big collab-y thing. And if you're interested in doing that, there's a Google spreadsheet where you can sign up and pick a chapter in a day. Thank you for listening to my really ridiculous story, and have a great day. I will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.